Thank you very much for inviting me to come along and do a presentation for you as a previous partaker in the QI. I am the champion for City Hospitals Sunderland, and we did our journey a couple of years ago. So that's our team. We did a residential weekend, so the same type of lectures and things that you're doing now, but we got to be residential, which was excellent for team building, getting to know each other, really, really good ideas. And I would say as a team, we're a good, well-established team. There's very little movement within the team. We've all been there for quite a long time, and we had some fabulous ideas and we had regular meetings, but it wasn't until we did the QI that we learned how to put those ideas into a proper structure and like a QI methodology that really helped us to put things that we often talked about but never really had any structure about how to develop it. So that was a really good learning curve for all of us. The first thing we did was to change the way that we communicated with each other. Everybody has hundreds of emails every day in the inbox, and often a lot of them get ignored. So we set up a team WhatsApp. All the MDT team were involved. Everybody agreed to it. There were some a little bit reluctant, but we did agree to give it a go, because we did say that you could always leave the group if it wasn't working for you. We've got a couple of groups now. We've got just a nurses one, and we've got a full MDT one. And it's really has changed the way that we communicate, and we get answers to our questions quickly. And just things like if there's a new patient, communicating with the dietitians so you don't clash going to the wards at the same time. It's really quite a proactive way of communicating. So this was our purpose and aim for our project. It was to empower our families to download their equipment, review their results, and self-manage their diabetes. And we were eventually wanting to put this out to the whole caseload. So this was our task that we decided to pick as our first. How we started. So we started quite small. We decided, rather than try it on people that had been already diagnosed, we would just start with new families from this point forward. And we didn't have anybody at the moment, so we had a few weeks where we could sit down and plan how we were going to change things. But that's what we were going to do. We were going to start with everybody that was newly diagnosed from now. We developed a downloading pathway, so we had people downloading before they even left the ward. So we used to get cables from Roche, and we used to get the families to bring the laptops in, and where possible we would set it all up for them, show them how to do it before they even went home. Where it wasn't possible, we would provide laptops from a charity if we could. We changed the language that we use, so we don't use highs and lows, we use above target, within target, time in range. And we actually put this onto our clinic letter for the rest of the caseload as well, because HbA1c is just a number, and some of our families didn't really understand what that number meant. And if you put your target HbA1c is 48 and your HbA1c today is 60, they can see where they are in relation to that number. We also found it helped talking about time in range, and we put the target for that on the letter as well, so that they know how well they're doing in relation to what their numbers are. So that we could provide laptops for our families, we did a fundraiser, and this was our first fundraiser. We all abseiled off the hospital roof. We raised lots and lots and lots of money, and we put all that money that we raised into the charitable funds that's held by the hospital. Next slide, please. We were really, really disappointed that we'd gone to all this effort fundraising and we were unable to buy laptops as we'd planned because of the regulations and the rules held by the trust. They don't allow you to buy a specific item for a particular patient. So we were allowed to buy laptops and stuff like that for clinic use for the caseload, but we weren't allowed to hand them over to specific patients. And this was really, it was quite a blow because it was a lot of money that we'd ploughed into that account, but never mind. We did purchase some iPads that we could use in clinic, and we planned to use those for education, Digibete, Prem, Survey Monkeys. So we did use the money for that. Then we discovered that we weren't allowed to use the iPads as we planned to do because of the hospital IT regulations, and we weren't allowed to download the programs that you need to run videos. So we couldn't have Digibete on. So at this point in time, we were sat with 2 iPads with absolutely nothing on, which was really, really quite sad. Never mind. We plodded on, we didn't give up. So we're at a point now where we're looking at what we'd learned, and we definitely know that using QI tech methodology works. Start small, don't be afraid to try new ways of working. We knew, but at this point, that it was going to be a long journey, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, especially for the whole caseload. And it does require a lot of effort to sustain the momentum and enthusiasm of the team. We were at this point having weekly meetings before our Thursday clinic, just half an hour. This started off really well, and then they started dropping off, but we just tried to keep rallying everybody, using the WhatsApp messages, getting as many people to the meetings so that we didn't give up. And also trying not to do too much in each meeting, because everybody's got busy schedules, and if you give somebody too much to do, we found it was better just chipping away, doing small amounts of work, and then we get the bigger result at the end. Jobs were getting done. Always make sure that you allocate your tasks to a named person or a couple of people to work on together, and every week ask them how it's going, have they started, where they're at with it, what problems they've got. Just make sure you evaluate it regularly. And we've also learned that we're very adaptable as a team, and COVID has proved that even more, but we can adapt to different ways of working. So shortly after we'd done the QI project, we started a questionnaire of all patients that were coming to clinic, asking them about downloading, when they'd last made adjustments to the doses, and who made those adjustments. So these were the results in June. Bear in mind, these weren't just newly diagnosed families. We'd had a few newly diagnosed that we'd started our project on, but this was the whole of the caseload. So we can see that from this pie chart, quite a good amount of people had downloaded within the last week. But the orange section here was they didn't even bother filling it in, or they couldn't remember. So our goal here is to try and increase that green section to nearly a full circle and get people downloading very regularly. And this was who made the changes. And you can see from this slide that almost half of the people that filled in the questionnaire, it was the diabetes team that had made the changes. A small amount said it was both, and the other section was they'd done it on their own. So our goal, obviously, with this one here is to increase the green section so that we've got more people downloading. So measuring the success, we'd started to notice a big difference in our new families and some of our existing families by the language that we were using. The new ones don't know that it isn't an option to download because they've done it from day one. So they don't know that some of the caseload didn't download. So they don't know any difference. It is difficult to measure what we're doing, and we haven't done another clinic survey because we haven't had face-to-face clinics. So that's something that we'll look at to do. But just last week, our mean HbA1c in the last 3 months has fallen again, and it's now below 60, which is our best ever at 59.6. So we're all quite proud of this, and I would like to think it's got a lot to do with the QI, the way that we're approaching, and the changing attitudes of the families that are newly diagnosed and the existing families. I would like to think it's the QI project that we've been working on so hard that has made this difference. So it is good. So some of the barriers that we faced from the beginning were, there's obviously every team has got different personalities in it, and sometimes it can be very hard when people are very enthusiastic. And when we got back from the QI, some of the team wanted to put it straight out to the whole caseload rather than just starting with newly diagnosed families. And that was quite a challenge for me, because it was quite a senior member of the team that wanted to just go for it and do it with all the families. And I kind of said, no, we have to do it by QI methodology. We need to start small, not be frightened to try things that might fail, but let's just stick to what we agreed in the beginning. And we did. And I was backed up by the rest of the team at that point as well. So that was good. The language that we're using as well, we're wanting our families to not be downloading for us. So we're still, even now, 2 years down the line, we still get families that do say, I've downloaded for you, or I've sent you a download. And if we ring them, they'll say, oh, well, I sent one over last week. And they still feel like they're doing it for us, like they're doing us some kind of favour, whereas the message that we want to get across is you're downloading for yourself so that you can have a look at it. So now when we talk to people, we kind of say, have you downloaded? Have you had a look at it? Have you spotted any patterns? Can you see where changes need to be made? And try and have a discussion rather than just say, do you want to increase your Levemir or your Degludec? And that's quite a challenge, because a lot of these families are used to having clinicians making those clinical decisions for them, and they just sit back and let you do it. And they've had that since diagnosis. And some of these kids have been with us since they were 2, and they're now in the high teens. So we can't expect that kind of behaviour to change overnight. But the language we use does have a big impact. We know that. IT and technology, like I've already discussed, we did have problems getting stuff onto the iPads, and we went knocking on doors. We decided the consultants were the best people to do this because they were more senior, so they had meetings with the head of IT. And we've now, on the iPads in clinic, we now have Diabetes UK, we've got Digibete, JDRF, and we did manage to do our PREM surveys, which were excellent, because every patient that came through clinic managed to complete the PREM survey. So that was good. But what we can't do is run any videos. So unfortunately, most of the stuff that we wanted to use from Digibete for clinic education can't be used. And I think sometimes you have to admit that you've tried every avenue, you've not given up easily, but some barriers can't be overcome. And hospital rules are hospital rules. Security on IT has to be extremely strict, and it's strict for a reason. So, and to be honest, we didn't have a crystal ball at the time, but even if we had all that up and running on an iPad now, we're not even doing face-to-face clinics, they're all virtual, so they wouldn't have been any good anyway. Working in a socially deprived area was also a challenge, where laptops were concerned. Sunderland is quite a deprived area, and a lot of our families haven't got the funds to buy laptops and haven't got laptops. Accessing the funds to buy the laptops was extremely frustrating. I'll talk about that and how we overcame that in a few slides. COVID-19 kind of put things on a halt, because the doctors were not allowed to run routine clinics, so they were working in other areas. The nurses, the PDSNs, were working from home, and we kept all the age band clinics ticking along while the doctors were doing other things. So we didn't have any face-to-face or virtual QI meetings officially. It kind of took a back step. There were things still ticking along, and our project was luckily very well established before COVID hit. So we're still doing all the things that we planned, and that is still moving on. And Roche stopped sending us boxes of downloading cables, which was really frustrating, because we put them in our starter packs, which meant we could get people up and running on the ward. Now the families have to ring and order them themselves, which can take up to a week by the time they've done. And sometimes it doesn't really seem appropriate to be asking them to do that. But we do try. And sometimes I've rang Roche on their behalf and pretended I've been them and just in front of them and just said, can you send us out a downloading cable, just so that we can get things up and running. So that was quite a blow as well. COVID-19 stopped us having our lovely face-to-face meetings every Thursday, half an hour before clinic, and this was the board that we used to use, and we set this up after we'd done the original QI project, and it was very user-friendly and a very interactive board. So all the MDT members that could attend would attend. Everybody's lists of jobs were on it. Our mission statement was right there in the middle. Everybody knew who was doing what. But obviously, if you can't have face-to-face meetings, a board like this wasn't the best. So we overcame that. One of the consultants kind of consolidated everything and put the ideas board, which is now online. There's a few more pages to this, but that's the basic thing. It was the task, who owned the task, whether it was completed, whether it was ongoing. So that's now online. It's not as good as our lovely virtual board. I can guarantee that everybody contributed towards our big blue board and stuck post-its on. I bet some team members have not even accessed this because it's just not as. And when you're having virtual meetings as well, it's difficult flipping from one meeting room onto an ideas board and back again. But at least we have got something that we can share online and we can all go into if we need. So this was our second fundraiser that we did last summer, and it's the Sunderland 10K. So our consultants ran the race with our patient rep and their family and our psychological therapist. It was a good turnout. All the nurses went along and we shook buckets and we raised lots and lots and lots of money. But this time, instead of putting it in our charitable funds, which we knew we wouldn't be able to access it for, we sent it directly to the Supporting Children with Diabetes charity. And by doing that, that meant that we could directly access the money for families that were struggling. They're meant to be on benefits to be able to access, but this is a very small charity, so they had quite strict guidelines as to who they would provide and who they wouldn't. But because we ploughed quite a lot of money into it, they did leave it to our discretion. Because what we did find was a lot of our families on benefits were actually able and already had computers compared with some of our families that do work that are on low incomes, but unfortunately they didn't make the criteria of the charity. But now we gave all this money, they did let us use our discretion as to who could. Like I say, the iPad did get partly resolved, and our Prem survey was very successful and gave us a lot of really, really positive feedback. These are just some of the things that we've developed using QI methodology, which just comes as second nature to us now, to be honest with you. Everything that we talk about, we use the QI method of solving, tasking and just getting on with. And our healthcare assistant pretty much did this single-handedly. She's developed an HbA1c drive-through. So people come to the hospital, they wait in the car, she goes out, takes the blood sample, brings it back in, goes back out with the results. They're there and gone within 10 minutes. So they don't have to pay to park. They don't have to leave the vehicles, which is great. For families that struggle to get to the hospital, we have trialled some home testing kits. Dr. Whittle had done a video at home using her family to demonstrate how to use these kits. And we've had mixed results from them. We'll carry on, we will plod on with those, but not everybody can drive to a hospital for a drive-through, so we do need to come up with something else. We started doing remote clinics quite a while ago, and they're working really, really well actually, and I think they'll probably be here to stay for the foreseeable, even if lockdown finishes, because we've done a patient satisfaction survey and most of our families are preferring the remote clinics. It's a 45 minutes out of the life rather than half a day off work by the time you've come to hospital, travelled, parked, got weighed and all the rest of it. It runs much more efficiently and it's a much more efficient use of our time. We're all pretty much working from home. We've had to adapt and we're even doing pump starts and Libra starts now virtually from home, and they're working really well as well, so that's good. One of our registrars, Noreen, did a Deglodec audit, and that's resulted in us changing starting doses for Degludec for the over 8s, are getting a little bit more units per kilo compared with what they were before she did the audit. So that was good, and that was all done using QI methodology. And we have launched the Digibete app, and 74% of the caseload now have it. But what we're finding with that is they might have it, but they're not really using it. So we're going to set up another little QI project, recontacting the families, trying to find out if they've downloaded it, if they're using it, if not, why not, and trying to explain the benefits, etc. of that. So that's another thing we've got on. So future projects, and these had all been started before lockdown. Obviously, rolling out the self-management is going to be an ongoing task, and it's not for the faint-hearted for a caseload that are used to us doing everything. But we are starting to see the difference, so that's going to be ongoing forever. We just developed new clinic. We put clinic slots and everything, and developed trying to target family patients that are pre-high power, targeting them when they reach a HbA1c of 65. So before they go on the pathway, and we were bringing them to clinic to find out how they were doing, what they were struggling with. And part of that clinic appointment was developing a new education session on adjusting, and obviously helping them with downloading issues, but showing them how to adjust their insulin to try and get them to engage and prevent them going on the high pathway. Some of the consultants and senior nurses were working with social care, because we did find ongoing with safeguarding that there's a lack of understanding for type 1 diabetes within social care. So they'd set up a meeting with people from the safeguarding and social workers and like that, and trying to raise a little bit of an awareness, but that's totally been put on hold at the moment. So and Neil is developing a algorithm for ward nurses to help with doses of insulin, and it's based on carbohydrate ratios. So they put the ratio in and the carbs in, and it'll give them a dose of insulin. And this is to help prescribing insulin on the ward round at meal times, which is always quite an issue, and that's ongoing as well. So currently we are working from home. There's been not major challenges with working from home and technology that are slowly resolving. We're trying to get new smartphones, which we thought would be an easy job, but we're now using the QI approach to get around the hospital system for this, because we've got the very old Nokia phones that don't do very much other than ring people and text people, and they don't really do that very well. And it would be so much easier with WhatsApp, etc., and being able to take photographs and videos and things like that for to share with families. It's become quite a challenge, but we're on it, and hopefully that'll be resolved soon. We haven't had any formal QI meetings, but all the projects, luckily we were quite established as a QI team before COVID hit. So a lot of our projects were already established and ticking along, and they've continued to do so. We've got our first official QI meeting via Teams this week since lockdown. We've had a few mini meetings that have been tagged onto the end of something, not something that's been officially just for QI. So we've got our first one tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So hopefully we're looking forward to resuming the projects that we had started. We will continue, obviously, to be downloading and dose adjusting from diagnosis. And it is rewarding seeing the new generation coming through, and they are like, it's a breath of fresh air sometimes when people ring up and say, will you have a look at me download? I think I need to put my Degludec up. And you just think, hallelujah, this will be a new one. And it's just like they're a different breed altogether. So it's nice to see that coming through. And I think that's my presentation over. If anybody's got any questions, feel free.